Hello, and welcome to another American Photo Treks post-processing video where I'm going to show you what I do to post-process an image, and hopefully then you can see what I do and either do it exactly like me or just kind of get a starting point and do it, give it something with a little bit of your own artistic flair. But this will at least get you started and kind of give you an idea of how I process these images. And today we're going to be processing a panoramic image of the Milky Way over a lone tree. And what I have here, I'll just show you for the people who haven't watched one of these videos before. This is me. I'm Dave Soldano. That's me right up there in the corner. And I am one of the owners of American Photo Treks. And if you're watching this, that means you've been on American Photo Treks workshop. And thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate having you. And as I go through this, if I touch any kind of mouse button or anything on the keyboard, you'll see that it'll appear right there and you'll know exactly what I'm doing so you can follow along. And if I'm going too fast, you can pause and you can rewind and do it all at your own speed. So what I've done here is I've pre-selected 9 images in Adobe Bridge. And as you can see in these 9 images, I was a good Milky Way photographer. I balanced my tripod first and then I balanced my camera. So as I panned the camera, the horizon stayed nice and level. But I'll show you up here that I took a few images before I balanced my tripod, and now you get to see why I tell you to balance your tripod before you take the panoramas, because then you wind up with this unbalanced images, horizon, which is much more difficult to merge into a panorama, and when it does, you probably wind up losing a lot on the edges. So always level your tripod before you begin taking panorama images. And as you can see here, I did these all portrait style, and I almost always do them in portrait orientation, because if you do it in landscape, they wind up too skinny and nobody ever really looks at them. They just don't look right. I don't like it. So these were all taken with the Rokinon 24mm lens, which is my favorite night lens, and the Sony A7S. So I've pre-selected my images here. Just if you're interested, I'm pretty sure these were done at 20 seconds around. There was a lot of ambient light here, so I think these were ISO, I think around 3200, maybe 2000. There was so much ambient light. All right, so I've pre-selected them in Adobe Bridge, and I've used Control to select each one. And now I'm going to double click, and that will open them all in Adobe Camera Raw. And there they are, open in Adobe Camera Raw. And so now I want to work everything I do to one image, I want to do to all of them. And to do this, I come up to here where it says Film Strip. And then these little dashes right here, I click that and say Select All. And that's what I just did. And so now anything I do to one, it happens to all of them. And I always start off right here with my white balance. And this is as shot, which was on auto white balance. Okay, so it was ISO 5015 seconds, in case you were wondering. And, you know, it's not bad, but it's not as pretty as it could be. So a lot of times I'll try auto just to kind of see what happens. That's not bad. You know, it gives it a little bit more color, a little bit more interesting. Lars a lot of times uses daylight white balance, and that's why his pictures look like that, because that's where he starts from with daylight white balance. I'm going to go ahead and use auto, but then I like to increase the purple just a little bit because that kind of adds some drama and flair to it all. And then I'm going to take the temperature up or down just a little, because I like a bluer sky, not super blue like that. You could do super blue if that's what you like. But I kind of think, well, if the sky's blue, and so if it's dark, then it's dark blue. That's just the way I think. All right, so there's a good color temperature for me right there. Probably about that. Looks pretty good. I could go bluer. I could not, but all right. So that's where we'll start off with our white balance. Who knows, we may decide to adjust that later as we move on. And then a lot of times, which is probably wrong, I just go ahead and I'll hit auto to just get started there, just to give me a starting point. And I definitely don't want auto exposure, because I liked my exposure pretty darn well But it's good when we're shooting in RAW because we can adjust. And in fact, I might have even liked it a little darker to make that Milky Way pop a little bit more, but looks like my exposure was pretty darn good, so I'm probably just going to have it like about -10 right here. Contrast is your friend usually when processing the Milky Way, but not too much because then it kind of blows out, or you can kind of look at it. That's pretty good right there, but I'm gonna do a different type of contrast later on, so I'm not gonna give it that much contrast. I'm gonna go right about here. You'd say, don't you want it to pop, Dave? Give it a lot more contrast? Yeah, but that's gonna hurt it in other ways. So I got a better way of doing that later on. So I'm only gonna give it about 25 here. So highlights, because there was so much ambient light, I don't want to do that because it's just going to blow out. And even though this is the main image I'm looking at, I am looking down here to kind of see how what's going on here. So there's too much ambient light, so I'm not going to give it too much highlight. Shadow I'm going to bring up because I kind of like more of the foreground out. Some people don't. Some people like it darker and with more shadow. But I got a great dynamic range on this camera. It's a fantastic lens, and I can do this without adding a whole bunch of grain. Whites, take a look, maybe to make the stars pop, but just a little bit more. That's good. Blacks can add drama. See how I go down with the blacks and add just a little bit of drama? Don't want to go too far, just a little bit. And I will give it a little clarity. Clarity can be your friend with the Milky Way too. Just check out right at the core and see what's happening as I add clarity. See what's happening down there. It's not bad. You don't want to go too much on it because again, it can add grain or just look unnatural. And vibrance is also your friend when processing Milky Way images. So I'm going to give it a little bit of vibrance there. So before I move on to the next thing, I told it to do everything, but it doesn't always do it. So I'll select this again and I'll say sync settings. I'll hit OK. Boom, 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 boom. It does what I did to this one to everything. So my next thing would be sharpening. I do my sharpening here. Some people do it in using other programs, this type of stuff. With Milky Way images, you do not want to sharpen a little. I'll only bring this up probably about 35 or so, a radius of about 1.4. And then what I do is I hit Alt and then slide the mask button. And what you see happen is we're only going to apply sharpening to those areas that are masked. And what I want to do here is make the stars nice and sharp. And I want to make them sharp little dots that look pretty cool. So that's what I'm doing with the mask. And as I move this mask, you can see the stars are starting to come out. Then I let go. And that's kind of cool, right? See, now they look like nice little point stars. But maybe I want them to have a little bit more fluff. So I'll come down a little bit. So that's pretty good right there. I like that. Don't need too much. All right, so now I'm going to go to my lens profile. And this is really important. So we'll click Enable Lens Profile Corrections. Now I've already selected the profile, the Rokinon 24 millimeter 1.4. And when I do, watch what you can kind of see what happens. It's correcting the vignette. See how it's kind of fixing that? And it's also correcting the distortion, and it's doing that to all of them. It's very, very nice. It's huge. When we didn't have the Rokinon lens profiles, I would use a profile of another 24 millimeter lens, and it actually would usually do a pretty good job, but it wouldn't be perfect. Now it's really perfect. Then you can go over here in color and kind of get rid of some of the fringing and that type of thing. I don't see a lot of it here. Maybe after I process the panorama, I might go back and look at it, but it's another thing that's really important to get rid of chromatic aberration and fringing. Now, remember I told you I was going to do contrast a different way. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go over to my FX tab, see where it says dehaze. This thing works great on the Milky Way. So I think it's time for a little swig of beer. Bud Light. I get a lot of grief from that with Lars because he only drinks German beer, but I like my Bud Light. So now notice as I move my dehaze filter here, look at what that's doing. It's doing exactly what you want to do with the Milky Way. It's making it pop, stand out. The sky still looks good. It's just better than contrast and clarity. It's just a magic little processor right there. Gotta love it. And see, it's doing it to all of those photographs. And that really looks good. I like that. But you know what? It looks a bit too over sharpened now. And you got to be careful with that because it'll look I don't like over sharpened Milky Way images. They got to be a little softer, you know what I mean? Or else they don't look real, or I just don't like them. So I'm going to turn all of that down just a little bit, and that does soften it just a little bit. Looks good. All right, so now I've got a pretty good starting point here for a nice Milky Way image, okay? So now I come back up to, I'll go back to here, and you know what, I'm going to bring down the clarity a little because it's just a little over sharpened. There we go, maybe even the vibrance just a little. Okay, so I'm going to come up here to my little dots here on my film strip. And first of all, I'm going to make sure that all my settings are synced again. Boom, 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 boom. They are. If they weren't, if something went wrong and for whatever reason they weren't all synced, then what you'd see are these little caution triangles appear here for just a second while it synced those settings. So what about my colors now? They don't look too bad, but I don't know. A little bluer now, maybe. A little, make it prettier, maybe. A little prettier. Blue. And we'll take a look at that. All right. Now I click those little things right there, and what we have here is a much improved merge to panorama that has come with the latest updates to Adobe Creative Cloud, and this thing works great. It is amazing. It's my first go-to panorama because of a little thing called boundary wrap, and we're going to see it. So I'm going to hit merge to panorama, and look at that. It's like, Dave, you've told me to do this one before. I remember how to do it, so boom. And look at this. It created this perfect panorama right there, right here in Adobe. And we're still working with raw files, so there's a lot of power there. And if I needed to, in this case I don't because I was nice and perfect with my tripod, I could use the boundary wrap feature to see how it's to fix any little problems on the edges. And it does it in such a way that it keeps it a nice, good looking panorama. So I got that. And so I'll say, hey, that looks good. Let's do it, merge. And let's see, what do we call it? Let's call it single tree pano 4. Why 4? Well, why not? Okay, so I'm going to hit save. Now it's going to create a DNG, which is a digital negative file. And digital negative files are good because they maintain all that good raw data, but they're bad because they're ginormous. All right, there we go. And look at my Milky Way panorama right there. Isn't that pretty? All right, but you know, it's not really centered the way you'd want to, so you come up and grab your old crop tool and see, you can kind of see how what that boundary warp did right there, right? So I will go ahead and I'll put it on normal. And I want that tree to be dead smack in the center. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do that until my tree is pretty much in the center. And I'll lose a little bit of the Milky Way, so it's a question of, do I want symmetry or do I want a lot more Milky Way? In this case, I think I want symmetry. And I don't want it to be too skinny, because if it's too skinny, people just, I don't know, they pass it by. It's not as interesting. So I want it to be fatter. There we go, like that. Okay. The tree's pretty close to the center, so we'll do that. We'll hit enter. Pow. And I just think that's a more interesting image. See, it pops a little bit more. And now I can see, well, I've got stuff here, but I've got this kind of cool road. Maybe I want to take up my shadows just a little bit. And there we go, just so you can see the road just a little bit more. Okay, but now here's something that's going to drive Dave crazy, and that is what's called fringing in the branches of this tree. And remember, I told you that I might want to go back and fix that, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to that the lens profile tab. I'm going to go to color, and then as soon as you do, it creates a little, and I'm going to say remove chromatic aberration, bang. And I'll want to do that. That will turn on these sliders. And then I am going to zoom into that tree. And do you see how there's this color in these branches here? That is called color fringing. And I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And it doesn't look good. So we're going to see if raw can get rid of that. Let's see if it can or not. Maybe it can, maybe it can't. And sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. I might be fussing too much to really worry about it. Purple, green. Can't do it too much because it'll affect the overall picture. And yeah, it's not working in this. Too bad. Well, there's another way to do it in post, but that's more of an advanced thing. So I'm going to, from way back here, it's really hard to see. So we're going to leave it like that. And now this is a good image, really as it is. There's more obviously we can do with it if we wanted to go into Photoshop or use other plugins or anything like that. But for this video, we're trying to do everything in RAW, which kind of corresponds to how some people use Lightroom and things along those lines. And I will do one more thing. I'll come here, and again, people may want to make the Milky Way pop just a little bit extra, just a little bit more. And there is a way to do that, and that is with an adjustment brush. And that's what we'll create right here. We'll click on the adjustment brush and see how it creates this circle right here. Well, we can make that circle get bigger with our brackets or smaller. And we don't want it to be too ginormous, because it's the center circle is where you get 100% of the effect. The outer circle is where you get a slowly tapering off effect. So I'm going to put it right about here. That's about the right size for what I'm going to do right here. And as you can see, I've done this before with the Milky Way, so a lot of my adjustment brush presets are already done here. What I'll do is I'll give a little bit extra exposure to where I'm going to brush, a little bit extra on the contrast, a little bit extra clarity, de-haze, and saturation. I'm just looking at this, and I'm going to turn this down just a tad to about +20. And now I'm going to brush this and just pop the Milky Way. So you can see what I just did there. Only where these adjustments came in where I brushed. And one thing I can tell you I don't like right now at all is how it made that too dark in the middle. So I'm going to bring down just a little bit of the contrast and try and see what that does to it and where we're getting maybe the de-haze. Yeah, the de-haze was just turned up a little bit too much. Maybe it's the clarity. I don't know, it's something, but it's got to get fixed. So I don't like how dark it's made that. A little dark is fine, to give it that contrast and pop, but too much ain't. So where is that coming from? It's the de-haze. So we'll turn it down just a tad. Now I'm kind of, it's a fight between the core and the rest of it. So I think we'll go right about here. And then I might do a second adjustment brush. Right on the core a little bit, brush a little extra, make it pop just a little bit more. So there, and you can go up and down with that. And maybe you like it, maybe you don't, maybe that's for you, maybe it isn't. But that is a very good basic how to process a panorama image of the Milky Way, in this case over a lone little tree. And you can use that as your starting point, and if you have Lightroom, RAW, however, this should be good. So now you just come right down here, say save image, and you can save it to any type of image you want. If you want to save it to a JPEG, call it Lone Tree MW Panel 4, and then you got to tell it where to save. In this case, we'll save it right there in Night Skies, Monte Vista, February. I took this in February. Save. And there we go, before they put up the signs. All right, And that's it. And I hope this was very helpful. I know it's been a little long, about 20 minutes, but you can speed through the stuff that you don't need. You can stop on where you need me to slow down. And I hope this was helpful for you. All right, thanks again. We really appreciate you coming to our American Photo Treks workshops. We hope you enjoy them. We enjoy putting them on and meeting all you guys and having all that fun. And hope to see you at another workshop. All right, bye for now.